the other part that I grew to love about the World Cup is the qualifying process and going and playing in, countries that don't necessarily love the U.S., just tough conditions from fire alarms being pulled to fields being soaked with water to having things thrown at you, batteries thrown at you, mace. I mean, it's everything.
CONCACAF, baby.
The U.S. Soccer Podcast is presented by Henkel. From pre-game rituals to everyday routines, Henkel helps families prepare for the moments that matter. Because winning starts at home. With Henkel's family of brands, including Persil, laundry detergent, Got2b hairstyling products, Dial soap, and Loctite adhesives.
Eddie, welcome to the show. I want to start by gassing you up a little bit. We love to do this for all of our guests, so I think you're the humble type. Please buckle up a little bit. But here we go. Like all the greats, you got your start at UNC. Go Heels.
That's right, yes.
From UNC All-American to the number 2 overall pick in the very first MLS draft, 3-time MLS champion, MLS Defender of the Year, MLS Best 11, Sports Illustrated named you the best U.S. defender of all time. Yeah, this resume is probably why you've been inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame. But perhaps the greatest accolade of all, a young Meghan Klingenberg hung your poster on her wall. Eddie Pope, I wanted to be you, man. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for having me. And thank you for making me feel a little bit old, but that's okay. That's okay, because I've admired
That's
your
all
career as
right.
well. So there we go.
It's okay. That has to happen because I've been feeling pretty old for the, last 10 years of my career as my 18-year-old teammates have been coming up into the league. So now it's my turn to feel young.
Yes. It sneaks up on you. Let's put it that way.
Now, Eddie, let's get into it though. Here's how I want to structure this interview. We did something really similar with Kristen Press, and I feel like it worked out really well and it was super fun. This is, of course, a World Cup year, and you played 3 tournaments yourself. So I want to split our conversation into 3 parts, three eras, if you will, each focusing on the World Cups you played in: France 98, Japan and South Korea in 2002, and then Germany in 2006. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's start here. France 98. Now, headed into that competition, the United States had secured some really promising results, defeating the mighty Brazil 1-0 in the Gold Cup. Then you factor in a really great performance at the last World Cup and the growth of MLS, and it seemed like hopes were pretty high. How do you remember the build-up to that tournament? And what was confidence like amongst the group, especially after such a good Gold Cup run?
Confidence was high. It was a long time ago, but I remember, and then we played a game, I think in Austria, where we did well, and so we were getting good results. So confidence was high. I think we had sort of a young mix of players. A mix of players, some young versus some old, and so I think the younger guys didn't quite know what to expect, but we had some older sort of anchors that had been there, done that, and were helping to pull us all along. So I'd say confidence was relatively high going into it.
Now, for our younger listeners, let's recap what happened. And Eddie, I will not be offended if you don't want to relive this and you want to plug up your ears right now. Feel free. So the U.S. lost all of their group games and finished dead last in the competition. There was a lot of really great players in that group, though. So I got to ask, where did it all go wrong?
I think it's no secret, that the team chemistry wasn't the best. Um, at that World Cup, there were a lot of different crazy things that were going on. We ended up playing that World Cup without our captain at the time, and which was a big blow to all of us, especially the younger players, and to not have your captain there. And then I think we had some issues between, I would say, players who were used to starting but maybe weren't starting in those games. They had been used to being on the field at all times, and I think there was some friction there. And then there was some friction with the coach as well, between, again, some of the older guys. So I think in a World Cup, um, chemistry is so important. because not only can just the regular things that typically go wrong in a tournament like that, if you don't have good team chemistry, it's just you're fighting an uphill battle. And we did not have good team chemistry. And so I think that we almost had lost before we even started. Um, and so looking back on it, to me, that was the biggest difference because you're right, we had so much talent, and we had players who had been in Europe and had been very successful in Europe. MLS was coming on, so now we didn't have the complaint that we didn't have a league, so it was
Mhm.
primed for us to do relatively well. But again, we got the team chemistry part all wrong.
I appreciate that diplomatic answer, and I feel like there's been some years between that, so you've had time to practice. But I
Yeah.
do wanna riff a little bit more on the chemistry of the team, not to get into specifics, but just more like, I've been on teams where we've had the best talent in the world. Like, I'm talking the Martas, the Lindsay Heaps, the absolute best of the best, and we haven't placed well, or we didn't win the championship. We were the favorites, but it didn't add up. Truly, talk about chemistry though. Why is it so important? And why do some teams who maybe don't have the best talent are still able to get those results because of that chemistry?
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think for us, especially, when you have players who, again, younger players who need support, who need to be not only coached by the coach, but coached by some of their teammates and who need to be managed within the flow of a game. And when you have people who are barely talking off the field, you can imagine what happens when you're on the field. And then you have players who are just out there on an island by themselves. And when you
Mhm.
have that on the field, and it's in a World Cup, you're just going to get torn to shreds. And so I think for us, and we even had quote unquote drama in between the games. And so now you're
Mm.
not preparing for the games properly. And so I just think that almost everything has to go right in a World Cup, just
Yeah.
to place well and to have a good performance. Forget about how good the competition is that you're facing. And so when you layer in things like that, again, it's just an uphill battle. And for us, it was like anytime you turned the corner, there was something else going on. And so it was just really difficult to get good results. And I think even, there was a game that we felt like we should have done really well in and that we didn't. And it was just kind of like the dominoes were
Mhm.
falling day in and day out. So it was a struggle for us.
And it's always a dream to get there. This is like what you dream of when you're a little kid, right? But it ended up being a nightmare instead of a dream. You were pretty early on in your career at this point. How do you deal with that? How do you pick yourself up and not just go again, but do it better the next time?
I think the first thing that, all of us who felt like we were going to at least be still in the mix, you never know if you're gonna be able to make it to that next cycle and through that next cycle. But I think all of us thought, if we ever get here again, what can we do differently? And
Mm.
not to move ahead, but one of the things that at the time the coach Bruce Arena for the '02 World Cup did was he called, and I don't know if he called everyone, but I know he called a lot of players, and he asked us what went wrong. And it was almost like his first step was, let me just fix that out the gate. And I think by doing that, that was so smart because it eliminated the issues that we had there. They didn't rear their ugly head, so to speak, again, and it was kind of behind us. Of course, we had a new group of players that stepped up and came in, but we had some
Mhm.
from the previous cycle, and so I think just the hope of all of that stuff going away and kind of having a clean slate was kind of what got me through it personally.
The countdown to 2026 is on, and every moment matters. Whether you're at home or on the pitch, preparation is everything. From clean kits to fresh confidence and bold style, Henkel's family of brands is there behind every routine that keeps life running smoothly. Because great performances don't just happen on the pitch, they start at home. Brought to you by Henkel and its family of brands, including Persil laundry detergent, Got to Be hair care products, Dial soap, and Loctite adhesives. Proud partners of U.S. Soccer.
Okay, you moved us forward to 2002, so let's go there because this one was different. 98 doesn't go the way anyone had hoped, and then 4 years later, you're back on the biggest stage in the world. But this time it felt like the US wasn't just participating, it felt like you were competing. You beat Portugal, you beat Mexico, you made a quarterfinal run that, in a lot of ways, reshaped what's possible for men's soccer in the United States. From your perspective, what was the turning point, and when did it go from happy to be here to, hey, we belong?
I think the biggest thing was that US soccer at the time had the residency for this sort of new crop of players, and in that crop was Landon Donovan and DeMarcus Beasley, and I could go on and name a bunch of players. And we had some, for the first time, maybe some younger players, really younger players who were in Europe in really good academies. John O'Brien was at Ajax and had been there for a long time. And so this younger group, they were just different, and they were in an environment where they were training twice a day for weeks and months at a time. They were playing lots of games, and and when they came into camp, I mean, it was just they were fearless. They were young. It was fresh, and it was just great to have that in our environment. And to be frank, the chemistry was better. And those kids, although they were already really good players, were humble kids, nice kids. I call them kids because, yeah, but they were at the time, and I think our group was just we just got along better, and everyone kind of had that common goal that you have to have when you're representing your country, and so that was mixed in with someone like myself who was kind of in the middle, and Frankie Hayduk's and Collier Reyna's, and again I could go on and on, and so for us, that was to me, that was the turning point, was that crop of players, they were so good, and I use the word again, so fearless, battle tested already. They weren't afraid of anything. So to them to play for Portugal in the first game was kind of like a shoulder shrug. And so it actually kind of brought us along. And again, I'll layer in some of the guys like Tony Santa that was coming back from Germany and things like that. So I think for me, that was the turning point.
Yeah, you're mentioning the team was fearless. There was good chemistry. But I also have to wonder, did a certain water fountain photo have anything to do with it as well?
Well, I mean, no, but it definitely made up, let's just say they got roasted a little bit, for some of those guys. And
A little
a
bit.
a little bit, yes, yes, that will go to yeah, that was infamous. And the other thing I'd throw into it obviously was, having Bruce Arena as the head coach, his style of coaching. I was used to that, and it was something that players really responded to. And
Hmm.
and and again, I think that was obviously a major. The coach is a major piece of everything, and so it was almost like the pieces were falling in place, and we could all feel it.
Yeah, it was the best showing for the US men's national team in the modern era. And so my question now is, how do we take those lessons and replicate it for this 2026 class?
I think you have a similar dynamic in that the players are battle tested. How many of them are in Europe? How many of them are big clubs in Europe, and not just on the bench, starters,
Mm.
playing well, accomplishing a lot, confidence, fearless, and you have a top-notch head coach again. And the cherry on the top is that now it's at home. So expectations, I think, for all of us are probably pretty high, and but I do think it's set up nicely for them to do well.
You keep mentioning the word fearless. You've said that this group was coming in 2002. They were young, they were fearless. What do you mean by that? And why is it so important?
I think especially, um, and you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I say especially for the men's side, there's always that stigma that, well, it's just the US. They don't have the system in place. It's not Europe. It's not quote unquote South America. They're not a powerhouse. I mean, when you hear that narrative all the time, I do think that it plays on the psyche of men's national team players. That has certainly
Mm.
changed, but I would say back then it was a thing. That '94 World Cup helped to shake that off quite a bit for a lot of us. But I do think that that's there and it exists. And I felt like that group of kids, because they were playing so many friendlies against so many different countries and so forth and so on. Some of them were already in Europe. They just didn't have that. Maybe it's a chip on the shoulder, maybe it's an insecurity as well. But that's sort of what I mean by that. And I just felt like, of course, that's changed now, but it was a thing back then.
And after the 2002 run, did you see a massive cultural shift in the USA, especially combined with the WNT winning in 1999?
I think so. And one of the things that was going on at the time was MLS it was on the fence. Will it stay? Would it go? It certainly took some pillars of soccer back then, ownership groups that decided to make sure that it stuck around, and it was kind of like all hands on deck. I think for everyone in U.S. soccer. So certainly, I think that performance, and we knew that as players, we knew that it was only going to help if we had a great run. And so I think that happening, I do think the women, that happening just helped to get us out of that, that we were kind of in neutral, living off of grassroots soccer in USA, just kind of waiting to become again the powerhouses and have an established league and have players that would be sold to Europe and watching the women's game continue to expand. It was time to just get out of that old school grassroots soccer mode, and I think we were able to do that then.
Now, going to a world tournament is an experience that is just life changing. It is totally different from league play. It is totally different from college. It is just a different beast. And it's hard for me to kind of explain to people outside of going to a World Cup, like how that actually feels. So I'm going to put it on you. I want to know what did you learn in your first World Cup that you could bring with you into this next one? And what did you leave behind?
I think it is hard to explain. You're right. I do think for me, one of the best moments is when they play the national anthem. And I think we all get
Mm.
chills. And then you kind of start to think back very quickly, all the training, playing when you're little, all those things, and you kind of looking around you. And to me, it feels surreal. And
Mm.
and that's when the excitement really kicks in. And the other part that I grew to love about the World Cup is the qualifying process and going and playing in countries that don't necessarily love the U.S. Um, in most of soccer wise, I mean, and just tough conditions from fire alarms being pulled to fields being soaked with water to having things thrown at you, batteries thrown at you, mace. I mean, it's
CONCACAF,
everything.
baby.
CONCACAF, and I mean, I think we all, although it's tough in the moment, you do love it, and the different countries that you have the opportunity to go to, and so I think and that is tough to explain. By the way, I do agree with that, and but it's the part that for me that I really fell in love with. I was always excited about going down to again somewhere in CONCACAF and playing in Azteca Stadium. As hard as it is and was. So I think that for me was special. I think maybe, what do you leave behind? Sometimes the not so great performances that you have as a team and that you have as an individual
Mm-hmm.
that are inevitable. And so that part you kind of want to leave behind and just remember the good performances, although I'm sure you would say the same. It's hard to forget those. But
Yeah, because they're our biggest growth moments, aren't they? And it really just, those are the moments that define your career. It's you either crumble under them and you never come back, or you learn from them and you get better. And so we talk about them a lot because I think it really is a fork in the road for many athletes, and you get to see what you're made of. And that doesn't happen very often in such public ways for other jobs. So it's something that we have to revisit over and over again.
yeah, so true. So true.
Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of U.S. soccer, driving a positive impact in the game and in communities all across the country, helping turn possibilities into achievements and lifting fans, stadiums, and cities to their feet. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America, official bank of U.S. soccer. Bank of America, N.A., member FDIC.
While you were talking about traveling to the other countries, I was thinking that's like some of my favorite parts of playing at the highest level was going to Portugal, going to China, getting to all of these different countries. I'm playing in these really different environments and these cultural differences. And so it got me thinking, what was your favorite memory from the tournament or from that cycle? And I also wonder if it was ducking out of the water fountain chute.
Thank goodness I didn't get chosen for the water fountain shoot. I don't know how that would have turned out. Probably not good, but um, still, I think probably qualifying. I used to love to play in a smaller stadium in Costa Rica called Saprissa, and they've since
Mm,
moved on. Why they moved out of that stadium, I don't know. But it was the toughest place to play in, and for me, tougher than Azteca. And it's like
mm.
the stadium, it just almost went straight up, so the fans are right over you, and their team plays like they've just been given a jolt of adrenaline, and for 90 minutes that is, and you wake up in the morning and it's like 9, 10 o'clock, and the game's not until much, much later, 5, 6 hours later, and the fans are
Yep.
already in the stadium, and you can see it on television, and that to me was it was so difficult, but so memorable, and it helps prepare you for what's to come in a World Cup. So when we knew that we were facing Mexico in the World Cup, it was
Mhm.
like we've been there, done that. I mean, this is could is there an opponent that we didn't know better? And so um, we had so much confidence going in that game. But again, qualifying helped prepare us for that, and of course a bunch of friendlies. But um, that really helped us moving forward. And sometimes you think, well, now we're hosting, you miss that process, a little bit, and you try to make up for it, but it is difficult.
Now, last question on the great run in 2002. Did 1998 have to happen for 2002 to be so successful?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think so, because I do think that, there was going to be a residency program probably anyway. Uh,
Mhm.
so, and they're 4 years apart, and so you hope that the cycle kind of takes care of itself, and it usually does. So I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think so, but I do think it for the guys that went from 98 to 2002. I do think it made us better. So I'm kind of torn, I guess, with that answer a little bit. I'm not, none of us are happy that it happened, but you do start to think about the positives that were there, and that was I made it to a World Cup, and it was
Mhm.
my first World Cup. It will always be special, and I'll go back to the hearing the national anthem for the first time in the first game was something that I still remember to this day. So I wouldn't, trade that for anything.
It is really special standing up there in a different country, representing the United States in a way that you dreamed of since you were a little kid. It is really special, and that's a really cool moment. I do agree with that. But all right, let's go to the third act. Germany 2006. On paper, that roster was stacked. There was Hall of Famers everywhere you looked. You had Dempsey, Donovan, Keller, Beasley, Reyna, you. We had experience, talent, proven success, but it just never quite clicked. In that tournament, you finished last in the group. And in that second match against Italy, the eventual World Cup champions, it turns into absolute chaos. There's no flow, whistles everywhere, 3 red cards, and unfortunately, you happen to be one of those red cards. And just like that, that's the end of your World Cup. I imagine that's not the ending you dreamed of. What did it feel like walking off knowing that it could be your last international competition?
Well, I knew it was going to be my last international competition.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
I mean, obviously, the result was okay, and but yeah, obviously getting sent off, which I'll argue to this day I don't think I deserved. But anyway, was not fun, obviously, and I think you really put it well. It just didn't quite click, and There wasn't necessarily any reason why. It goes back to sort of what I said with, I think in '98 in World Cups in these tournaments, it's like so much can just not work just because a lot of times it's
Mm-hmm.
because of the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's you, and sometimes it's a combination of things. And it started off sort of this we had this difficult run we had against Ghana in different tournaments, and obviously a great country and a great team. So again, it's already so difficult just to perform well, just to play difficult countries, and everything again has to go well. And I just think sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't. And for us in that tournament, it was tough to just figure out why it didn't quite go our way when we needed it to.
Looking back, that draw with Italy was quite frankly heroic and suggested that if the team had more to give. I wonder if this tournament kind of felt like a what if.
It did, and it's like it started this again, that sort of feeling about playing Ghana. And one of the things I always say is there's certain teams that you don't want to draw, you don't want in your group. One of them is typically an Eastern European country, at least in my opinion, and an African country, because you just don't know what you're going to get. You can get teams that are playing, out of their skulls. They all have talent. They all have players all over the world, or they can have their flat moments, and then you're like, well, what happened to them? And
Mhm.
we ended up getting sort of both of them. And it was just a team that was so good, so talented. I think people look at it and think, oh, well, Ghana's next. That's not that big of a deal. And we're looking at it like, oh boy, Ghana's next. So it was
Mm.
great to try to rally after that, the game with Italy and getting the point out of it. But again, it was just a game where it just didn't click for us. Just didn't go right. Clint scored a great goal, but then we gave up a weird goal, and it just again didn't go our way.
Now, at this point in your career, you're an established veteran. You're one of the guys that the team leans on in big moments. How did you see your role back there beyond tactics and technique? What mattered to you most?
Trying to find just some stability in the tournament, and it's like in these tournaments, it's you have to try to manage the games and the trainings and the personalities, and the expectations and all of those things. And you want to try to play whatever role you can. And if it's I was probably more of a silent leader, and maybe having individual conversations with players, and just trying to steady the ship a little bit. And it's difficult. It's tough when you feel like everyone's doing that and things are going well off the field, and things are in place. But then once you step on the field, something just doesn't go your way, and it's hard to recover from that because the people that you're playing against are so good. So any sign of weakness or any small mistake just gets punished. And sometimes you only get so many games, and you kind of start to lean in that direction. It's just it becomes tough to be able to get things back on track.
I feel like when we get some distance from the World Cup, we can be really grateful for it. I mean, I had a really hard tournament in 2016 at the Olympics. Our team crashed out in the quarterfinals in a PK loss to Sweden. And looking back, I'm just so grateful that I was able to go be a part of it, participate in it. And it sounds like it's really the same for you. Even though 2006 and 98 were hard, you have beautiful memories of being in those tournaments. And even if they didn't turn out the way that you wanted them, it sounds like it was a dream come true for you. So, looking back on it all, outside of scorelines and trophies, what stands out to you most?
I think a lot of what you said in that, you should be lucky to play in one World Cup. And so I think to be fortunate enough to be a part of three of them, for me, it's like you said, it's a dream come true. And it's not like I was, born in, out in LA when Kobe Jones and all those guys were living the soccer life, and, and we were looking up to them, or in New York or New Jersey, really, where you've got like Miola and Harks and Tab Ramos and those guys, like soccer legends, where, I was just a kid from rural town in North Carolina. And so, a lot of times I had to try to feel like I'm not just happy to be here. You have to keep telling yourself that when you're, again, from where I was from, and soccer was growing, but it wasn't huge, and I didn't have a whole lot of soccer resources, and we leaned on the colleges in the area, and we begged for coaches to train us individually when they had time, and it was really sort of it was a lot of patchwork kind of going on, and now you're coming to a World Cup and you're playing against people who were eating, living, and breathing soccer, and they are having they're in academies at young ages, and they have some of the best coaches in the world, and it's on television all the time, and their parents know the sport really, really well. And so I always felt like, yeah, it was a little bit of an uphill battle, but to be able to play in 3 World Cups and in an Olympics like yourself is a dream come true. So it's tough to complain when when things are going your way like that. So
Yeah, absolutely zero complaints on my end too. It was such an incredible ride, and I wouldn't switch anything, even though there were some really, really tough moments. But I want to take us back into the present. So 20 years after 2006, we have a home World Cup. You were someone who became a pro in the years following USA 94 and witnessed how a World Cup can change soccer in this country. What do you think the legacy of 2026 on home soil might be?
oof, you hope and pray that the team does really, really well. And I don't know what that means, because it can mean anything from winning the World Cup and people will look at you sideways, to making it as far as we ever had in the tournament. So it could be a lot of those things. And one win already is that the expectations are high. And so that's a win. So we already won there. But I do hope and think that that the World Cup makes the sport more popular in our country, for both the men's and the women's sides. I hope that it spurns more investment in both the men's and the women's game, especially from a sponsorship standpoint. I hope that there are more, from a sort of structural standpoint, meaning training facilities and in fields and stadiums, that owners continue, because I think overall we're doing a great job. But owners continue to want to invest in those things and build the sport the way that it should be built, and support it the way that it should be supported. And so I hope that that's what it leaves behind. And I do think that is 1,000% possible. I almost expect it.
I love that. And I do wonder, from somebody who has been to 3 World Cups, has seen it all on the world stage, do you have any words of wisdom for this 2026 team?
Just that it happens so fast, and that you're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then the tournament's there, and then it's over so quickly. And it's almost like taking the time to, as they say, smell the roses, but um, for sure that, and grabbing the bull by the horn, so to speak, and a bunch of other different type of metaphors, but and to really enjoy it, because they will have something special that I didn't have, and that's a World Cup at home. And being able to play, not all, I mean, in front of your family, uh all your friends, everyone can be there and watch you in person relatively easily. And but then also, their faces will, if they do well, right, will forever be remembered in a home World Cup, the same way that 94 is still remembered, right, in a wonderful way. So obviously a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility on their heads, but I mean, it's just to really take it all in and enjoy it, because it will be over before they know it.
Listen, this team has a chance to make history. I love that you mentioned that it could be the best World Cup run in the modern era, not featuring a water fountain. And I feel like that's an important history marker to make. You know what I mean?
It is 100%.
Listen,
And
all right, let's end here. I guess I want to ask, how far can this USA team go? Like, how good are they actually?
Well, in my opinion, and it's biased, of course, I think the team is really, really good. And okay, there were some bumpy performances, right? But I do think whenever you're bringing a new coach, they have to put their thumbprint on the process, on the players, and their expectations. And I think that as of late, that seems to have happened. And I think that's great. But I also look at the experience that the players have. And obviously, we have players who are playing again in big clubs in Europe. We also have players who are playing in MLS at big clubs and are doing really, really well. And so I think across the board, we look really good. And I also think that the squad, and we'll see what it ends up being, there's way more to choose from than ever before. And so I feel like the coach will have the opportunity to really be specific about what he wants and who he needs to kind of apply his tactics and the plan that he uh, or whatever formation he plans on playing moving forward. And the pool is extremely deep. And again, I was looking at it the other day. I think it's the deepest it's ever been. So again, no pressure on them, but I think that the team can do really well. And is it quarters, semis? I don't know, but I do expect and hope a deep run.
Well, fingers crossed. We're going to be watching and we're going to be there covering it all. But Eddie Pope, thank you so much for being on the show. It has been such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Anytime, by the way. Thank you so much.
Check engine, ABS, or maintenance light on? And O'Reilly Auto Parts is right around the corner. O'Reilly Auto Parts can help take the guesswork out of your vehicle's check engine, ABS, or maintenance light with O'Reilly Veriscan, a free service that only takes a couple of minutes to complete. You'll receive a free, easy-to-read report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans that have been verified by ASE-certified master technicians. O'Reilly Veriscan can identify the most likely problem with just one scan. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts can then recommend the parts and tools that you need to do the repair right the first time. And if you're not comfortable doing the repair yourself, they can recommend a local shop for you. Don't ignore check engine, ABS, or maintenance light. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today, a free service exclusively at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Welcome back to the U.S. Soccer Podcast presented by Henkel. And that was Kling with the legend, Eddie Pope. Kling, another great conversation there. You said you had an Eddie Pope poster when you were growing up. I idolized Eddie as well. I'm curious where that came from and who else maybe was on that list for you.
I love this about one thing we have in common. Just kidding. Just kidding. But you know what's funny about this poster?
Best friend.
Best friend. The poster, it could have been better. I got to be honest. It was just a team photo of DC United. You know how they are. They're like 4 rows of guys with coaches on the side, and that's it. And it just said 1999 MLS Cup champs. And I was like, they probably could have done more with this. Alas, it was on my wall. So I guess the poster did what it was supposed to do. But I just truly, really loved watching how poised and cool he was in the back and the way that he led his teams. It was really, truly fun to now talk to him because I feel like you could see the thoughtfulness and the composure in the interview that I always have admired anyways on the field.
Yeah, for me, I remember the first time I got to talk to him, and it was actually at his Hall of Fame ceremony for U.S. Soccer. So it happened at Red Bull Arena, and I wandered into him in the concourse. He was just walking between stuff, and he was so friendly. But for me, growing up, he was the first male American player that I felt, as I had debates with people who were like, "Oh, I really only watch the Premier League, or I only watch Champions League, whatever." That I knew you could put up against anyone, and he was good enough. And anyone who watched him that knew soccer knew he could have played wherever he wanted in the world. He chose to play in MLS, which is really, really cool. But like, as you watch Eddie Pope, you could put him in any team. And obviously the stories around Milan and all of that. And that's how good at soccer he was at a time when we were still sort of fighting for relevance and acceptance and all of that type of stuff. And it was like you could, and I think DeMarcus Beasley went on to be that. I think Reina did as well. Clint Dempsey, other guys in that list. But to me, Eddie Pope was sort of that first player where you're like, you can challenge whatever you want about American soccer, but you cannot say that Eddie Pope cannot play center back for any team in the world.
I love that. And I think you're right. You don't go to 3 World Cups if you're not that type of player, regardless of which country you're on. And, United States has been an up-and-comer on the men's side for a while, but that doesn't mean that, it's easy to go to a World Cup, especially when there's so many people that can be selected. And he was at the top of his game for 3 cycles. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. What a legend, and awesome that you got to talk to him. Thank you to Eddie for coming on the show. We've got our Ask the Pros coming up in just a moment, but first, the U.S. men's national teams chases greatness on the road to the world's biggest tournament, and you can show your support through artwork. In partnership with AT&T, U.S. Soccer is connecting fans to players through their fan art platform, where a handful of the most compelling artworks will be showcased to the U.S. men's national team players and at their match versus Belgium in Atlanta on March 28th. You can visit ussoccer.com/fanart or click on the link in the description to submit your artwork. Submissions are open through March 10th. Now we are into our Ask the Pros segment. Reminder to any current or future U.S. men's national team players, you are welcome to put your questions for Meghan Klingenberg and Ali Bedoya in here. And I don't know why you'd have a question for me, but you can. This is sponsored, of course, by O'Reilly Auto Parts, our favorite partner of the show. And let's start in my neck of the woods with a question for you. We've got Susan in Coral Gables who said, what's the biggest defensive adjustment teams have to make in a World Cup compared to club play?
I don't think there's huge defensive adjustments that you need to make in terms of club play and international play. I think it's just more high stakes, and then how fast can you recover and how fast can you get on the same page as the people that you don't typically play with week in and week out. How fast can I, as an outside back, get to know my center back and their tendencies and what they do and how they play and how they think and the angles that they can cover. And the faster you can do that, the teams that do that the fastest or already have those sort of connections are going to have the most success in this World Cup by far.
You always hear they're a tournament team. It's a knockout style team, right? The difference between regular season and whatnot, although at some point, it's 11 players and a ball on either side. Yeah. So it feels like it's pretty similar. Speaking of the World Cup, we have a question from Chris in Dallas, which is going to be one of the host cities. Give us your boldest World Cup prediction right now. I'm going to say straight out, there is going to be a first-time semifinalist. If you look at the history, which is very recent, of non-European and South American hosted World Cups on the men's side, you get often that outlier. Like the first time it really happened was 2002 in Korea and Japan. And you've got Korea, but you also got Turkey, which I think a lot of people forget. And even though they are a European team, they were nowhere near that history and they haven't been close since. And then you look at Qatar and Morocco. And so I think that little advantage going away of the, a European and a South American team, which are for the most part outside of the US and Mexico, the bulk of the top 20. Often, if you take away that little advantage of being a host or super comfortable or having the best fans traveling with you, then the level starts to even. And we've talked about it a little bit, but I think the added games will allow more teams to get comfortable because they'll be at the World Cup for longer. And there's maybe a little bit of room to make mistake early and then find yourself where so often teams, when that happens, they've already been eliminated. So I'm saying first-time semifinalist for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if that semifinalist, at least one, is from outside of UEFA or CONMEBOL.
But who's your, come on, let's put a name to it. Who's
team
your dark horse? Yeah, who's your dark
besides the
horse?
US?
I mean, you can pick the US if you think who that's going to be.
I will say the US, Canada, and Japan are my 3 big ones that I think have should feel legitimately going into it that they should be at a semifinal. And that doesn't mean a quarterfinal is upsetting because it would be the best finish ever for Canada and Japan. And obviously would tie it on the US side in the modern era. But those are the 3 that I feel really strong about. You could probably throw Senegal in there as well. So those are the big ones that I'm thinking about. But if you wanted to ask me, you could have just dropped a DM to Westwood One on Instagram at Westwood One Sports to ask the pros. And if you would like to ask us a question, you can do the same, and it will come our way. Thank you to Kling. Thank you once again to Eddie Pope, the legend. Thank you to all of you for listening. Don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Never miss an episode, and we'll be back next week.